The encounter, the asteroid field drifted silently through the void of the Kepler sector, chunks of rock and ice spinning lazily in the darkness between stars. It was here, in this forgotten corner of space, that the Nexari Empire first encountered the ship that would change their understanding of warfare forever. Admiral Crix stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, watching the tactical displays with growing interest. His scaled hands moved across the control panels as he studied the readings from their long-range sensors. What they had found was unprecedented. "Tactical analysis complete, Admiral," reported his weapons officer, a young Nexari named Voss. The unknown vessel is approximately 800 meters in length. Hull composition appears to be some form of advanced alloy we cannot identify. Crix nodded, his yellow eyes gleaming with anticipation. The Nexari Empire had conquered 17 star systems through superior technology and ruthless tactics. Their fleet was the most feared force in this sector of the galaxy. Any ship they encountered either surrendered immediately or was destroyed, without mercy. "Energy readings?" Crix asked. "Minimal, sir. The vessel appears to be running on low power. No weapons charged, shields at standard levels." Voss paused, checking his instruments again. "Sir, I'm detecting some unusual signatures. The ship's reactor design is unlike anything in our databases." Through the view screen, they could see the alien vessel clearly now. It was sleek and angular, painted in dark colors that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange markings covered its hull, symbols that meant nothing to the Nexari, but somehow conveyed a sense of danger. "Have we identified the species?" Crix inquired. His intelligence officer, Commander Zara, consulted. "Her data screens. Unknown, Admiral. The ship design does not match any known civilization in our records. The hull markings appear to be text in an unfamiliar language." Crix smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. An unknown species meant new territory to conquer, new worlds to add to the Empire. The Nexari had built their civilization on the principle that might makes right, and they had never encountered a species that could match their military power. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "Let us introduce ourselves to these newcomers." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the alien vessel. What they saw there made several Nexari officers step back in surprise. The beings on the alien ship were bipedal, with pale skin and strange fur growing only on their heads. They wore uniforms of deep blue and gold, and their eyes showed an intelligence that was both curious and wary. At the center of the alien bridge stood a figure who was clearly their commander. He was tall for his species, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. When he spoke, his voice was calm and measured. "This is Captain Marcus Reed of the Earth Federation warship Defiant. You have entered disputed space. Please state your intentions." Crix laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Earth Federation? We have never heard of such a place. I am Admiral Crix of the Nexari Empire. You will surrender your vessel immediately, and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." The human captain tilted his head slightly, studying Crix with obvious interest. "I see. And what gives you the authority to make such demands in neutral space?" "Authority?" Crix's voice rose with indignation. "We are the Nexari Empire. We have conquered every species in this sector. Our fleet numbers over 300 vessels. You are one ship, alone and outnumbered. That is all the authority we need." "Captain." Reed nodded slowly. 300 ships, that's impressive. How many of those ships are currently with you, Admiral?" Crix gestured toward the tactical display, which showed the positions of his fleet. 57 warships, human. More than enough to reduce your vessel to scrap metal. 57 ships against one, Reed mused. Those are interesting odds. "Tell me, Admiral, In all your conquests, have you ever faced a species that chose to fight rather than surrender? Many have tried, Crix replied with contempt. All have failed. Your species will be no different. Reed smiled, and something in that expression made Crix feel uneasy for the first time in years. Admiral, I'm going to give you one opportunity to reconsider. The Earth Federation values peaceful resolution of conflicts. We have no desire for unnecessary bloodshed. Peaceful resolution? Crix snarled. You speak of peace when you are surrounded by our fleet? Surrender now, or face annihilation. I was afraid you might say that, Reed said quietly. His image straightened, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a different tone entirely. It was the voice of someone who had seen too many battles and learned from every one of them. Admiral Crix, let me explain something about humans. We are a young species, relatively speaking. We've only been traveling between the stars for about 2 centuries. But in that time, we've learned some hard lessons about survival. Crix was about to cut the transmission when something in the human's tone made him pause. A most important lesson, Reed continued, is that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one who doesn't want to fight. The warning Admiral Crix stared at the human captain's image on his screen, trying to understand the meaning behind those words. In all his years of conquest, no enemy had ever spoken to him with such calm confidence while facing overwhelming odds. It was either madness or something far more dangerous. You speak in riddles, human, Crix said, his voice filled with contempt. Your philosophy means nothing against superior firepower. Last chance, surrender, or be destroyed. Captain Reed leaned back in his command chair, his fingers steepled as he studied the Nixari admiral. Admiral, before we proceed down this path, let me share something with you. My ship's computer has been analyzing your fleet composition while we've been talking. Analyzing us? Crix laughed harshly. What could you possibly learn that would matter? Quite a bit, actually, Reed replied. Your ships are approximately 400 years more advanced than the last major galactic conflict in this region. Impressive energy weapons, decent shielding, solid armor plating. Your tactical formation suggests a preference for overwhelming firepower over maneuverability. Crix felt a chill run down his spine. How could this alien vessel analyze his fleet so quickly and accurately? Your point? My point is that your technology and tactics are very similar to what we encountered during the Centauri Wars about 60 years ago. We learned a great deal from that conflict. Reed gestured to someone off-screen, and new information began appearing on the communication display. Technical readouts, battle footage, and tactical analyses filled the screen between them. The Centauri Commonwealth had a fleet of 800 ships, each one roughly equivalent to your vessels. They were confident that superior numbers would guarantee victory against Earth's forces. Reed paused, his expression growing serious. They were wrong. The footage showed massive space battles, with Earth ships moving through enemy formations like predators among prey. Crix watched in growing unease as he saw vessels similar to his own being systematically destroyed by sleek human warships. Impossible, Crix whispered. No single species could defeat such numbers. The mistake the Centauri made, Reed continued, was assuming that all species develop military technology the same way. They built bigger ships, more powerful weapons, stronger shields. They focused on brute force. And humans? Crix asked, despite himself. Humans come from a world where survival meant being smarter, faster, and more adaptable than everything trying to kill us. We don't build the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons. We build the most effective ones. Reed stood and walked closer to the screen. Let me show you what I mean. Computer, display current tactical situation. A three-dimensional hologram appeared between them, showing the positions of all ships in the area. Crix's 57 vessels formed a classic encirclement pattern around the lone human ship. It looked like textbook overwhelming force. "Notice anything interesting about your formation, Admiral?" Reed asked. Crix studied the display, searching for whatever the human was seeing. "It's a perfect encirclement. You cannot escape, and we have maximum firepower concentration." "True, but look at the spacing between your ships. Look at their patrol patterns. Look at how they're grouped by ship class." As Reed spoke, red lines began appearing on the hologram, connecting various ships and highlighting patterns in there. Movement. Suddenly, Crix could see what the human was pointing out. Weaknesses in their formation, gaps in coverage, predictable movement patterns. "Your tactical doctrine assumes your enemy will try to break through your lines or fight there. Way to a single escape route," Reed explained. "It's designed to contain and destroy a fleeing opponent." "Which is exactly what you will try to do," Crix said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "No, Admiral. That's exactly what we won't do." Reed returned to his command chair. "Human. Naval doctrine is based on a simple principle. Never fight the enemy's battle. Always make them fight yours." Crix felt sweat beading on his scaled forehead. "What does that mean?" "It means that while you've been positioning your ships to prevent our escape, we've been positioning ourselves to do something entirely different." The hologram shifted, showing new data streams flowing from the human ship. Crix realized with growing horror that the enemy vessel had been scanning not just his fleet, but the entire asteroid field around them. "You see, Admiral, humans learned long ago that space battles aren't won by the biggest guns or the thickest armor. They're won by information, timing, and understanding your environment." Reed gestured toward the viewscreen, where the asteroid field stretched away in all directions. "For the past 20 minutes, my ship has been mapping every rock, calculating every gravitational field, and tracking every particle of space dust in this region. We now know this battlefield better than you know your own ship." "Impossible." Crix breathed. "No computer could process that much data so quickly." "Human computers can. We built them that way because we had to. When you're usually outnumbered and outgunned, you learn to use every advantage available." Reed stood again, and his expression hardened. "Admiral Crix, I'm going to make you an offer, one time only. Order your fleet to withdraw from this system, and we'll pretend this encounter never happened. No shots fired, no ships lost, no casualties on either side." "You're insane," Crix roared. "We outnumber you 57-1. Yes, you do. And in about 30 seconds, that's going to become a serious disadvantage for you." "What do you mean?" Reed checked his chronometer. "I mean that the longer you keep your ships in that formation, the more of them are going to die when this fight starts. Human military doctrine has another principle, Admiral. If you have to fight, end it quickly." Crix stared at the calm human commander, trying to understand how anyone could be so confident while facing impossible odds. Everything in his experience told him this was bluff, but something deeper, some instinct developed over years of warfare, was screaming that he was missing something crucial. "Last chance, Admiral," Reed said quietly. "Withdraw now, or learn why challenging a human warship is a mistake most species only make once." Crix's pride warred with his growing fear. The Nexari Empire had never retreated from a single ship, but the human's calm certainty was unnerving in a way he had never experienced before. "Time's up," Reed said, and smiled. "I tried to warn you." The challenge the communication channel closed with a soft click, leaving Admiral Crix staring at a blank screen. For a moment, the bridge of the Dominator was completely silent. Then the rage that had built up during the conversation exploded. Outward, arrogant human filth. Crix roared, slamming his fist on the command console. Did he think his words would frighten the Nexari Empire? Did he believe we would flee from a single ship? His officers looked uncertain. Commander Zara stepped forward cautiously. Admiral, perhaps we should consider his warning. The tactical data he displayed was unusually detailed. Coward. Crix spun toward her, his eyes blazing with fury. Are you suggesting we retreat from one enemy vessel? The Empire does not show weakness. Voss, the weapons officer, checked his displays nervously. Sir, should we begin the attack? All ships are in position and ready to fire on your command. Crix took a deep breath, forcing himself to think tactically despite his anger. The human captain's confidence was unsettling, but numbers didn't lie. 57 Nexari warships against one alien vessel was overwhelming superiority by any measure. Signal. The fleet, he commanded. All ships are to target the enemy vessel simultaneously. I want that arrogant human vaporized in the first salvo. Yes, sir. Voss began transmitting orders to the surrounding ships. All vessels report weapons charged and ready. Targeting solutions locked. Through the view screen, Crix could see his fleet preparing for battle. The smaller frigates moved into flanking positions, while the heavy cruisers brought their main guns to bear on the human ship. It was a formation designed to deliver maximum firepower with no possibility of escape for the target. The human vessel is not moving, reported the sensor operator. No change in power levels, no weapons charging, no attempt to flee. They've accepted their fate, Crix said with satisfaction. As well they should. Open fire. The space around the human ship erupted in brilliant light as 57 Nexari vessels unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma, torpedoes, and particle cannons all converged on the lone target in a display of destructive power that could have shattered a small moon. The light was so intense that the view screen automatically dimmed to protect the crew's vision. When it cleared, Crix expected to see nothing but expanding debris where the human ship had been. Instead, the Defiant sat exactly where it had been before, completely unharmed. What? Crix gasped. How is that possible? Voss frantically checked. His instruments. Sir, all weapons hit the target. I'm showing direct impacts across the enemy's hull. Then why is it still there? Before anyone could answer, the human ship began to move. Not the desperate flight of a damaged vessel, but the smooth, predatory motion of a hunter that had finally decided to act. Its engines flared to life with a blue-white brilliance that outshone the stars. Enemy vessel is accelerating, the sensor operator reported, his voice cracking with fear. Speed increasing rapidly. Sir, those acceleration readings can't be correct. What? Are the numbers? Crix demanded. The human ship is pulling 12 Gs and still accelerating. No known species can survive those forces. Crix watched in disbelief as the human vessel began weaving through his fleet formation with impossible agility. It moved like a fighter craft, despite being the size of a heavy cruiser, dodging between his ships with precision that defied physics. All ships continue firing, he commanded. Concentrate fire on the enemy. His fleet tried to comply, but the human ship was moving too fast and too unpredictably. Energy beams meant to intercept it struck empty space, while the Defiant danced. Between his vessels like a ghost, and the human ship fired back. The weapons that emerged from the Defiant's hull were unlike anything in Crix's experience. Instead of the bright energy beams or explosive projectiles used by most civilizations, the human ship launched what appeared to be small metallic objects, no larger than torpedoes, but traveling at incredible velocity. The first object struck, the frigate Razor, punching through its shields and armor as if they weren't there. But instead of exploding, it continued through the ship and struck the cruiser behind it, and the destroyer behind that. Impossible, Crix screamed. No weapon can penetrate 3 ships simultaneously. But the evidence was before his eyes. The single projectile had passed through 3 of his vessels, leaving perfectly round holes in their hulls. Atmosphere vented into space as the damaged ships began losing power. More projectiles followed. Each one was impossibly fast, impossibly accurate, and impossibly destructive. They struck his ships with surgical precision, targeting critical systems, rather than trying to destroy them outright. "What are those weapons?" Zara asked in terror. Voss steadied his readings with trembling hands. "They appear to be solid projectiles, but traveling at nearly 10% light speed. The kinetic energy alone is devastating. How can they be so accurate at that velocity? I don't know. The targeting calculations required would be beyond our best computers." Crix watched his carefully arranged fleet dissolving into chaos as the human ship continued its deadly dance. Ships that had been in perfect formation moments before were now trying desperately to avoid collision with their damaged comrades. Defiant moved through the confusion like it belonged there, its impossible weapons picking off targets with methodical precision. Every shot found its mark. Every hit caused maximum damage with minimum effort. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." "Put it through," Crix commanded. Captain Reed's image appeared on the screen again, but now he was surrounded by the controlled chaos of a warship in combat. Officers moved efficiently around him, calling out tactical data and firing solutions. "Admiral Crix," Reed said calmly, as if he weren't in the middle of destroying a fleet 50 times his size. "I tried to explain this to you diplomatically. Human weapons technology isn't about bigger explosions or more powerful energy beams." Another salvo of kinetic projectiles launched from the Defiant, each one finding a target with devastating accuracy. "We learned to make every shot count," Reed continued. "When you're outnumbered, you can't afford to waste ammunition on armor and shields, so we developed weapons that ignore them entirely." Crix stared at the tactical display, watching his fleet being systematically dismantled. Ships that had been the pride of the Nexari Empire were being reduced to drifting hulks by weapons that seemed to violate the basic principles of space combat. "This is impossible," he whispered. Reed heard him and smiled grimly. "Admiral, this is impossible," he whispered. Reed heard him and smiled grimly. "Admiral, this is just the beginning. You wanted to see what happens when someone challenges a human warship. Consider this your education." The lesson continued with brutal efficiency. Admiral Crix watched his fleet of 57 ships being systematically destroyed by weapons and tactics he couldn't comprehend. The human vessel moved through his formation like death itself, untouchable and unstoppable. "Damage report." Crix barked, trying to maintain some semblance of command, as his empire's pride crumbled around him. 15 ships disabled, sir," Voss reported, his voice shaking. 7 more have lost main power. The frigate squadron on our starboard flank has been completely neutralized. How? How is this possible? Crix slammed his fists on the console. Again, we hit them with everything we had. Our weapons should have vaporized that ship. Commander Zara studied her readings with growing dread. "Admiral, I'm analyzing the human ship's defensive systems. They're not using conventional shields." "What do you mean?" "Their hull appears to be absorbing our energy weapons. The plasma torpedoes and particle beams are having no effect at all. It's as if their armor is designed specifically to counter our technology." Through the chaos of battle, Captain Reed's voice came over the communication channel again. He wasn't even breathing hard. Crix noticed with fury. The human was destroying an entire fleet and treating it like routine maintenance. "You're wondering about our defenses," Reed observed. "Let me explain something about human military development. We don't just prepare to fight aliens we've met. We prepare to fight aliens we haven't met yet." Another volley of kinetic projectiles erupted from the Defiant, each one guided by targeting systems that seemed to predict where Nexari ships would be, rather than where they were. 3 more vessels went dark as the impossibly fast rounds punched through their hulls. Your weapons use energy-based systems, Reed continued, his ship banking through a turn that should have crushed his crew under gravitational forces. Plasma, particles, directed energy, very common throughout the galaxy. We've been preparing for those kinds of weapons for decades. Impossible, Crick screamed. You couldn't have known our technology. We didn't need to know yours specifically. Energy. Weapons all work on similar principles, regardless of who builds them. So we developed adaptive armor that disperses energy attacks and gravitic dampeners that reduce impact damage. The tactical display showed the Defiant accelerating toward a group of heavy cruisers, its course seemingly suicidal. But at the last moment, the human ship did something that made Crick's mind reel. It folded space around itself, appearing instantly behind the enemy formation. Did they just teleport? Zara whispered. Micro-jump technology, Reed's voice explained casually. Very useful for changing position quickly in a firefight. We borrowed the concept from some very unpleasant beings we encountered in the Vega system. The human ship opened fire from its new position, its kinetic weapons striking the Nexari cruisers from behind where their armor was weakest. The massive vessels, pride of the Empire's fleet, began venting atmosphere and falling out of formation. All ships, Crix commanded desperately, form up on the Dominator, create a defensive sphere. His remaining vessels tried to comply, but the human ship was already moving again. It flickered in and out of existence, appearing in different locations faster than his crews could react. Each time it materialized, more of his ships died. Sir, Voss said quietly, we've lost 31 vessels. More than half our fleet is gone. Crix felt something he had never experienced in decades of conquest. Pure, helpless terror. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution. The human ship was demonstrating the difference between his empire's crude understanding of warfare and true military science. Why aren't you trying to destroy us completely? Crix found himself asking over the open channel. Reed's image appeared on screen again, and Crix saw something in the human captain's eyes that was worse than anger. Pity. Because, Admiral, we don't need to. You asked earlier why we don't want to fight. This is why. When humans go to war, we don't just defeat our enemies. We make examples that prevent others from making the same mistake. The Defiant came to a stop directly in front of the Dominator, close enough that Crix could see details on its hull. The ship was completely undamaged, despite 30 minutes of concentrated fire from his entire fleet. Your empire has conquered 17 systems, Reed said. You've built your civilization on the principle that might makes right. You've never encountered a species that could match your military power. And now we have, Crix said bitterly. No, Admiral. You haven't encountered a species that matches your military power. You've encountered a species that surpassed it centuries ago. Reed gestured, and new displays appeared on the communication screen. Star charts showing human territory, fleet compositions, and military installations. The scale was staggering. Hundreds of systems, thousands of ships, technological capabilities that made Nexari science look primitive. The Earth Federation spans 412 star systems, Reed explained. Our fleet numbers over 50,000 vessels. What you've seen today is one ship, operating at approximately 30% of its combat capability. Crix felt his legs give out as the implications hit him. 30%? We have protocols about excessive force, Admiral. Using our full military capability against a pre-contact species would be considered a war crime under Federation law. The surviving Nexari ships floated in space around the Defiant like broken toys. Of the 57 vessels that had entered this system, with such confidence, fewer than 20 remained combat capable. What happens now? Crix asked, His voice barely above a whisper, Reed considered the question seriously. Now, Admiral, you have a choice. You can continue believing that conquest and intimidation are the only paths to power. Or you can learn what we've discovered, that true strength comes from building something worth protecting. The human captain stood, his expression growing formal. The Earth Federation extends an offer to the Nexari Empire. Abandon your campaigns of conquest, treat your subject species with dignity, and we will welcome you as trade partners and allies. And if we refuse? Reed's smile was cold as the void between stars. Then the next human ship you encounter won't be as patient as I am. The communication ended, leaving Crix alone with the wreckage of his pride and the terrible knowledge of what humanity was truly capable of. The aftermath, 6 months after the encounter in the Kepler sector, the galaxy was talking about the Nexari incident. In trading posts, diplomatic stations, and military academies across dozens of star systems, the story was told and retold, each version adding new details to the legend. Admiral Crix sat in his quarters aboard the rebuilt Dominator, reading reports from across the Empire. The changes had been dramatic and swift. Word of humanity's military capabilities had spread through the galactic community like wildfire, and the implications were reshaping interstellar politics. Sir, Commander Zara entered his quarters, carrying a datapad. The weekly intelligence briefing is ready. Crix nodded, accepting the pad with hands that no longer shook when he thought about that day. The terror had faded, replaced by something he had never expected, respect. What news from the other empires? He asked. The Corvin hegemony has recalled all their expansion fleets, Zara reported. They're requesting diplomatic contact with the Earth Federation. The Altair Confederacy has done the same. Crix wasn't surprised. The Nexari Empire's encounter with the human warship had become required viewing in military academies across the galaxy. Every species that had built their power on conquest was suddenly re-evaluating their strategies. And our own territories? The integration continues smoothly, sir. The former subject worlds are adapting well to their new autonomous status. Trade agreements are being negotiated instead of tribute demands. It had been a difficult transition. The Nexari Empire's power structure had been built on domination and fear. Transforming it into a confederation of equal partners had required abandoning centuries of tradition. But the alternative, facing the full might of human military force, had made the choice clear. Any response from Earth? Crix asked. Zara smiled, something that would have been impossible during the Empire's conquest days. Ambassador Torres will arrive next week to formalize our trade agreements. The Federation is also offering technological exchanges. Crix leaned back in his chair, marveling at how much his world had changed. The Nexari had gone from conquering Empire to aspiring Federation member in less than a year, all because one human captain had demonstrated the futility of challenging Earth's forces. Sir, Zara continued, there's something else. We've received a message from Captain Reed. Crix straightened immediately. He had not spoken to the human commander since their encounter, though Reed's image haunted his dreams. What does he say? Zara activated the datapad, and Reed's familiar face appeared in holographic form. The human captain looked exactly as he had during the battle, calm, confident, and somehow sympathetic. Admiral Crix, Reed's recorded message began. I hope this finds you well. I wanted to personally congratulate you on the changes your empire has made. The Federation is impressed by the Nexari commitment to peaceful coexistence. Crix felt an unexpected surge of pride. Earning the approval of the being who had so thoroughly defeated him meant more than he cared to admit. I also wanted to explain something that may not have been clear during our encounter, Reed continued. The Defiant wasn't the most powerful ship in our fleet. It wasn't even close. We chose to send a single vessel not to demonstrate our strength, but to minimize the possibility of unnecessary casualties. The message paused, and Reed's expression grew serious. You see, Admiral, humanity learned long ago that true victory isn't measured by how many enemies you destroy, but by how many you transform into allies. The hologram flickered as Reed stood and moved closer to the camera. Every species we've encountered has faced the same choice you did. Some, like the Centauri Commonwealth, chose to fight until they could fight no more. Others, like the Nexari Empire, chose wisdom over pride. Crix found himself nodding. The human's words carried a weight that had nothing to do with military power and everything to do with experience. The galaxy is changing, Admiral, Reed continued. The old ways of conquest and domination are ending. In their place, we're building something new, a community of species working together for mutual benefit and protection. The message shifted to show star charts depicting the expanding network of Federation allies and trading partners. Dozens of species, each one offering unique technologies and perspectives to the growing alliance. The Nexari Empire has earned its place in this new galaxy, Reed concluded. Your people's strength and courage, properly directed, will be invaluable in the challenges ahead. Welcome to the galactic community, Admiral. I look forward to working with you. The hologram ended, leaving Crix alone with his thoughts. Through his quarter's viewport, he could see ships from a dozen different species moving peacefully through Nexari space. Trade vessels, diplomatic transports, and even a few human ships. Their presence no longer a threat, but a promise of prosperity. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Crix activated his console to find a young Nexari officer, barely old enough to have missed the Empire's conquest days. Admiral, the officer reported excitedly, we've received first contact protocols from an unknown species in Sector 7. They're requesting peaceful dialogue. Crix smiled. In the old days, first contact meant conquest or subjugation. Now, it meant opportunity. Send our diplomatic vessel, he ordered, and transmit our peaceful intentions. Let them know the Nexari Confederation comes in friendship. As the connection closed, Crix reflected on the events that had brought them to this point. A single human warship had shattered an empire built on conquest and replaced it with something infinitely more valuable, hope for a better future. The stars were witnessing a new age, and humanity had shown the galaxy the way forward. The lesson of the Defiant would be remembered for generations, not as a tale of military might, but as proof that the greatest victories were those that never required firing a shot. Outside his viewport, the universe continued its ancient dance. But now it danced to a different rhythm, a rhythm of cooperation, understanding, and the endless possibility that came from choosing wisdom over war.